Greetings, everyone. We will go ahead and get started in a minute. We'll give folks a few minutes to join us tonight for the consecutive 30th monthly picket action dedicated to the life of Professor Luis Acuña. Thank you for joining. There is translation available, so if you want to listen to today's program in English, please go to the bottom of your screen or click more in your device, and you will see the option for interpretation and choose English. If you want to participate in Spanish, go to the same option and choose Spanish. We will put the information in the chat. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 30th consecutive monthly picket action dedicated to the life and work of Professor Luis Acuña, who passed away just 2 days ago on Sunday, August 27th. My name is Allison Bodine. I am the coordinator of the Fire This Time Movement for Social Justice Venezuela Solidarity Campaign. Today's event, like the previous 29 consecutive monthly pickets demanding freedom for Alex Saab and US-Canada hands-off Venezuela, is being broadcast from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, the traditional and unceded territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, and Squamish Coast Salish nations. Today's picket action is organized by the Venezuela Peace Committee in Winnipeg, the Fire This Time Movement for Social Justice, Venezuela Solidarity Campaign, and Just Peace Advocates, with the support of Venezuela Solidarity organizations and individuals across Canada. This month's action is dedicated in the memory of Professor Luis Acuña, the Charge d'Affaires of the Venezuelan Embassy in Canada, who passed away on August 27th, 2023, surrounded by his loved ones in Caracas, Venezuela. Luis Acuña will be deeply missed. At these monthly consecutive picket actions, at his everyday work in diplomacy and as a Bolivarian revolutionary, and in the campaign for freedom for Alex Saab, to which he was also dedicated. He was a Bolivarian revolutionary leader, an educator, a tireless fighter for the independence and self-determination of the people of Venezuela, and a constant supporter in recent years, since he became active in Canada, of the Solidarity movement here in Canada. For the last 2.5 years, especially, Professor Luis Acuña joined the monthly picket actions to share his important perspective on the ongoing struggle, the struggle to free Alex Saab from US jail, to end the US blockade and sanctions on Venezuela, to normalize relations between the government of Canada and the government of Venezuela, or between the US and Venezuela. It was an honor to have him nearly every month. He only attended did not attend when it was absolutely impossible for him to make it. but are under all sort of circumstances and sacrifice of time with his family in many occasions. He joined us from Venezuela to share his perspectives at these monthly picket actions. And for that, all of us who organize these actions are very grateful. Today's program will begin with a section dedicated to just one part of the work of Professor Luis Acuña. It is impossible for us in only this short time to summarize his life or to talk about everything that he did for the people of Venezuela and for the struggle of poor, working, and oppressed people around the world. Professor Luis Acuña is someone that we will continue to talk about and learn about and will carry his memory forward in our work. He was born in the town of El Palenque in Sucre State on May 26, 1946. He was a research coordinator at the Universidad de Oriente in Sucre from 1987 to 1990. And became a leading academic. He was a coordinator of academic studies in his sector in this university. And in the year of 1995, he was elected Dean of the Universidad de Oriente of the state of Sucre in university elections, where he served from 1995 to 1998. In 1999, the most critical year for the Bolivarian revolutionary process, when the people of Venezuela, led by Comandante Hugo Chavez, took Venezuela into their own hands and forever changed the course of Venezuelan history. He was elected to the National Constituent Assembly and one of the signers of Venezuela's new constitution. He was elected multiple times within the National Assembly of Venezuela. He was Minister of Higher Education for University Studies after he was appointed by Comandante Chavez, and he was also elected in 2012 to be governor of Sucre State. Following this, he carried out his work as a diplomat, first ambassador, then charge d'affaires of the Venezuelan embassy here in Canada. On Monday, August 27th, there was a state funeral held for Professor Luis Acuña, held in the Antonio de Jose Sucre room of the Casa Amarilla, which is the headquarters of Venezuela's foreign ministry. The funeral was attended by the Minister for Popular Power for Foreign Relations, Iván Gil, who accompanied family and friends very close to Professor Luis Acuña, vice ministers, other representatives of the foreign ministry, loved ones, and fellow revolutionaries. As Foreign Minister Iván Gil said, Comrade Acuña was a worthy representative on the front line of the battle in Canada, facing the sanctions imposed on our country and fighting them every day, I will add, and this is very true. He also received today the Order of Liberators and of Venezuela. He's a recipient of this order, and it was awarded by President Nicolas Maduro. It was a well-deserved tribute, as Maduro said, to an outstanding man who accompanied us with his guiding word, with his ideas, and with his presence during the birth of the new republic. This is just a few words I wanted to start with today to give people a picture of the experience of a man that we saw, as I said, every month for months and months on end at these monthly picket actions. To start off the program, we're going to share a video that was shared today in Venezuela, and we're really grateful that the Free Alex Saab movement worked to translate it into English today to have it in time for today's action. We'll start with that video and then hear some words from Camilla Fabry Saab, who is the wife of Alex Saab. Thank you again for joining, everyone.
Luis Acuña fue uno de esos fundadores de la Quinta República. Fue uno de esos corredactores de la Constitución. Fue miembro de la Comisión de Educación y Cultura. Redactor de los conceptos de la educación pública, laica, gratuita, de calidad y del sistema social venezolano. Venía con las ideas muy claras. Era impresionante saber cómo en la Venezuela aquella, de finales de los 90, en la decadencia de la Cuarta República, había gente que traía un pensamiento tan claro, tan contundente, del humanismo, del bolivarianismo, milagros de la historia. Y Luis Acuña participó de manera elocuente y brillante en ese milagro llamado Proceso Popular Constituyente. El comandante Chávez siempre nos apoyó y nos propulsó. Siempre estuvo al detalle informado de nuestras gestiones. Luego el comandante Chávez lo llamó como ministro de Educación Universitaria, Ciencia y Tecnología y jugó un papel muy destacado. El comandante Chávez lo quería mucho. Mucho, mucho, mucho. Lo apreciaba de verdad. El comandante Chávez tenía a Luis Acuña como un amigo. Apreciaba sus consejos, sus ideas, de una manera que pocas veces vi en otras personas. Se los digo, pocas veces vi al comandante Chávez apreciar con tanta profundidad un consejo, una idea, una propuesta, como lo hacía con el profesor Luis Acuña. Pero disfrutaba mucho, porque Luis Acuña tenía un carácter jovial. Para él vivir era una alegría. Estuvo en la primera línea cuando se trató de enfrentar el golpe de Estado fascista, neofascista de la oposición extremista aquel 11 de abril del 2002. Ahí están las imágenes. Y él con su sonrisa de siempre, en las peores circunstancias de incertidumbre, allí estaba el profe Luis Acuña, un gran representante diplomático de Venezuela en el mundo, dando el combate por la verdad allá en Norteamérica, articulándose a los movimientos sociales de Norteamérica, de Canadá, de Estados Unidos, manteniendo su actividad permanente. Un hombre leal, leal de todas las lealtades. Luis Acuña fue de otro temple, de otra madera, de los leales, leales de siempre. No les importaba un cargo, sino le importaba la batalla que había que dar. En los últimos tiempos se convirtió en portaestandarte de la causa de liberación del diplomático venezolano secuestrado en los Estados Unidos, Zeese Solidarity. Lo asumió a pecho, con convicción, la defensa del honor, de la moral y de la legalidad de nuestro diplomático secuestrado en los Estados Unidos, preso político del gobierno de Estados Unidos, Zeese Solidarity. Y así llegó los días de su enfermedad, sus padeceres, que no impidieron que cumpliera simultáneamente sus labores diplomáticas y la causa de la liberación de Zeese Solidarity. Una vida donde debemos vernos nosotros. Por eso, a Luis Acuña hoy podemos decir, misión cumplida, hermano y compañero. vuela alto como un ángel de luz y de bien para seguir protegiéndonos y bendiciéndonos desde donde esté. Honor y gloria a Luis Acuña.
Honor y gloria a Luis Acuña. Honor and glory to Luis Acuña. Luis Acuña presente. Thank you all again. Thank you to the Free Alex Saab movement for helping us have that video accessible to everyone so quickly today. I imagine it has been a heavy day and a few heavy days for everyone who worked with Luis, a professor in Venezuela, and we really appreciate your making the time to join us and share some words and reflection for our continuing struggle, where we carry out the legacy of someone like Professor Luis Acuña is when we continue to commit ourselves to work for freedom for Alex Saab and for an ending of cruel US sanctions and blockade against Venezuela. So next I want to invite up Camilla Saab, who is the wife of US political prisoner held in jail in Miami, Alex Saab, as someone that I've had the honor of meeting finally in Venezuela just a few months ago, and been constantly inspired by your continued work and dedication. And thank you as well for making time to join us here today.
Buenas noches. Gracias.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Alison. As you said, honor and glory to Professor Luis Acuña. I would also like to greet all the comrades from different organizations, from Fire This Time for Social Justice, Hands Off Venezuela, Just Peace Advocates, the Venezuela Peace Committee in Winnipeg. I would also like to greet all the comrades from the Free Alex Saab movement that are also present here in this action today. I would also like to salute and greet the network of solidarity with the Palestinian prisoners and everybody else that is present. I today wanted to speak, and I thank Alison for this opportunity. Several days ago, in a space just like this one, in a webinar, I was able to meet Professor Luis Acuña in this reality through Zoom, through a camera, in a day where it was a support for Hands Off Venezuela. I met him at this occasion during this time, but Professor already knew about the pain that my family was going through. He knew about the abuse that had been carried out, not only against Alex, but also against Venezuela at large. He always was faithful, remained faithful to his Bolivarian spirit, and he always remained loyal to the revolution. And he was defending diplomacy for peace and sovereignty in Venezuela. He was always a huge defender of just or fair causes. Professor Luis Acuña was accompanying Alex and myself and my daughters, my family, much longer before meeting us personally, much longer before meeting in one of these actions. Professor Luis was a very solid man. He was a very kind man. As President Nicolas Maduro said, he was a man with a youthful attitude. He loved life and he expressed joy. This professor leaves a lot of lessons learned. He leaves a lot of strength. He leaves a lot of energy related and smiling also in difficult situations. Those who have the truth smile, and those who know that they struggle for a fair cause smile as well. I wanted to express my greetings, and I wanted to send out a hug to everybody who month after month accompanied Professor Luis Acuña in all of these meetings. I also want to thank all of you who accompanied him in his defense of international law and the defense of the peoples. I hug you, I embrace you all, because he built a cause, a just cause, and he created a family in this struggle. Professor Luis Acuña will always live on. We will continue his teaching, remembering his smile, remembering the smile of the person who knows that truth will always prevail. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you. Yeah, the truth will prevail. And I think that is a conviction we can learn very well from Professor Luis Acuña, from his attitude constantly under so much pressure. When I saw him in Venezuela, and it had become difficult for his own family because of the government of Canada's hostile policies against Venezuela, Professor Luis Acuña had a very difficult time in the past few years, and sacrificed that in order to continue speaking truth and saying what was right, and did what he could as charge d'affaires of the embassy here in Canada from Venezuela. He was doing all of that work from Venezuela because he knew it was important, even though it was very difficult. And yeah, thank you for sharing your reflections here today. We have to keep that same, as you said, joy with us in our work for freedom for Alex Saab. It is something that can feel so heavy every day that he continues to be in prison, and how difficult it is for you and your children and all of your loved ones. But we maintain that hope and that joy, and we will continue this work. Thank you. Free Alex Saab, and again, Luis Acuña, Professor Luis Acuña presente. So next, I wanted to share a few photos of a side of Professor Luis Acuña that many folks may not have seen, which was his diplomatic work here in Canada. Before, some of it before the pandemic, some of it after, but we wanted, and I wanted to just share a few reflections on that before we go on to the other parts of our program. There will be more greetings from folks across Canada who will also share a few memories of Professor Luis Acuña and their reflections for today. And then, of course, we have two really excellent speakers to talk about their recent experiences on the ground in Venezuela. But let's go now to these few photos and continue our memory of Professor Luis Acuña. So the first time that I had the honor of meeting Professor Luis Acuña was at a time actually when we also had a Venezuelan consulate, a Bolivarian revolutionary Venezuelan consulate here in Vancouver on the west coast of Canada. And together with Vancouver Communities in Solidarity with Cuba and Fire This Time, we invited Professor Luis Acuña to join us from the Embassy of Venezuela in Canada to speak about Comandante Hugo Chavez and the continuing work of the Bolivarian revolutionary process as part of the 8th International Che Guevara Conference held in Vancouver, Canada. There, Professor Luis Acuña joined speakers from around the world and from Cuba to talk about common struggle and the relationship with the ideas of revolutionary Che Guevara in our continuing work for a better world. It was an honor to meet him and his wife Miriam, who you can see in the photo. And in that photo, they were being gifted blankets on behalf of Indigenous folks and organizers here in Vancouver, alongside the diplomatic crew from the government of revolutionary Cuba. Then we also had speakers including Arnold August and Keith Bolander at the conference, and really just a pleasure to get to know him, that joy and that expression and that continuing education. He was a great educator and lecturer and a sharer of ideas. and was an incredible contribution to the Che Guevara Conference. That year, the International Che Guevara Conference also traveled to other cities in Canada, both a city in eastern British Columbia or central British Columbia called Kamloops, as well as a city in Alberta called Calgary. And so this was the event in Kamloops. It was an event with students at a university, also talking about Venezuela. And then in the next slide is the event in Calgary, working together with the Cuba Solidarity groups in Calgary, as well as with the Chilean community. And was an excellent contribution to have him here with us. That was 2019, so right before the pandemic. Then the pandemic began, and a lot of our work, I know all of us here, then moved online. So this photo was really just a few years ago, but was a time when we were able to invite Professor Luis Acuña to join us at an online event, probably one of the first. And you can see all the other great participants we had there, including Carlos Roan, who's the head of North America desk for the Venezuelan's foreign ministry. And then we began to be able to travel once again. And at this time, Professor Luis Acuña and his wife Miriam were in Venezuela doing their work. And we were able to meet him as we traveled for conferences and events. And he always made time to share with us, sometimes to do interviews for the Fire This Time newspaper, but also to show us his life and his home and speak to us about the challenges facing the Bolivarian Revolution candidly and openly, and help us in our continuing solidarity work. This is the most recent time I saw Professor Luis Acuña in June. I was able to visit him when I was at the conference marking 3 years since the kidnapping and arrest of Alex Saab, and had a really cherished time to share with his family at a dinner together and learn about his continued work, and always a little more about his time, and especially working with Comandante Hugo Chavez. On this occasion, we were enjoying stories of the first days of the Bolivarian Revolution, speeding around Venezuela in motorcycles, trying to organize things as quickly as possible, yet not saying openly they were traveling on motorcycles because it was dangerous. So doing their best to stay safe and move the Bolivarian Revolution forward. And at this time as well, it was actually a year back, but again, always making time during visits to Venezuela to share with one another. We're just going to move to a few more photos from his time in Ottawa. Which hopefully later we will hear from Mary Carmen Guevara, an organizer with Albo Movimientos in solidarity with Cuba and Venezuela, leading organizer, who has shared with us many of these photos. So this is Luis in the embassy, carrying out his work and diplomatic work with friendly and nations with the government of Venezuela, including the Palestinians, marking important historical days and bringing people together to remember the challenges and the successes of the Bolivarian revolutionary process. This is a statue of Simón Bolívar, the liberator. Continually having events and bringing people together to mark this important day. And doing his work as an ambassador in a difficult and hostile country that has imposed cruel and deadly sanctions against the people of Venezuela. And then working together, as I said, a constant supporter of solidarity, always available to answer questions, to come to meetings, especially in Ottawa, where he organized many events together with Mary Carmen Guevara, who, as I said, I hope we'll be able to hear from later today. These are some of the first events that they organized after he had arrived, bringing people together to learn more about Venezuela, sharing his knowledge and history, sharing events and special occasions, always inviting people to their home. This is an event I wish I could have been at, but was not, that had the Cuban ambassador to Canada at the time, Josefina Vidal, Miriam, Professor Luis Acuña, and others. I'm sure an incredible discussion. Professor Luis Acuña, as well, with another stalwart in defense of Venezuela that has passed away. So those are some photos, as I said, from the embassy, from our work here in Vancouver, and then also from Mary Carmen in Ottawa, to give a picture of his diplomatic work in recent years. Thank you to everyone who's shared words so far, to Camilla Saab, and I think we're going to go now to the next section of tonight's program. But I do want to just share a few words from Maduro as we segue, that I think will help us segue in his reflections about Professor Luis Acuña, where Maduro focused on his loyalty and honesty that we've already talked about today, his revolutionary conviction. Maduro said that Professor Luis Acuña was a loyal man of all loyalties, once a minister, and then a governor, and all sorts of positions within the Bolivarian Revolution, but he did not, as it was translated, jump to the bullshit, as a few who have done, those who are given privilege and position in Venezuela. As Maduro said, those who are pitiful next to the representatives of the right, pitiful and bow to the representatives of the right, that spit on and betray people. Luis Acuña was of another temper, of another construction. He was loyal. He was always loyal. He did not care about a position. He cared about the battles that he had to fight. And as Maduro also emphasized, he became a spokesman for the cause of Alex Saab's release by standing up with conviction in defense of the honor, morality, and legality of our diplomat kidnapped in the United States. So those are just a few reflections so far tonight on Professor Luis Acuña's life and work, which I'm sure we will see woven throughout the rest of the program. I now want to move on to our next section, which is going to be our featured speakers of tonight, which we will start off by inviting TERI Mattson. TERI is the host of the YouTube program and podcast, WTF is Going On in Latin America and the Caribbean. TERI has organized multiple successful delegations to Venezuela since 2013, which I have been really honored and glad to be part of, and is a leading organizer against US sanctions, threats, and intervention against Venezuela. TERI is still on our way back home from a very recent delegation to Venezuela, almost ongoing, but especially an important delegation, which was called the Zeese Solidarity Brigade. And it was the first of these solidarity brigades held in honor of another important organizer for the people of Venezuela and social justice. So TERI, the floor is yours to share your reflections and a little bit of the flavor of the Zeese Solidarity Brigade.
Well, thank you, Allison. I hope all of you can hear me. I am literally sitting in the airport in Panama City waiting for my connecting flight. So I'm so happy there's enough time to participate this evening with all of you, because Sunday was really just a huge loss, and to Venezuela, to her people, and to all of us that work in solidarity with both. I was in Venezuela when the news spread in Caracas, when the news spread of Professor Acuña's death. And I will also share earlier in the month, our delegation was informed of, you know, how his illness had progressed. And so, you know, we were all really hoping that he would recover. But it is a huge loss, and I'm so thankful to be part of tonight's program. So thank you, Allison. So I will just share with all of you that I'm literally just returning from Venezuela. I'm in transit back to the States. And I arrived in Venezuela the 1st of August to participate in the Zeese Brigade. This was a delegation, 13-day delegation, organized by Code Pink Task Force on the Americas in partnership with the Simón Bolívar Institute and the Ministry of Comunas in Caracas. So the objective of this delegation was to go, well, maybe I should say who Zeese was. I mean, most of you probably know that he was part of the Embassy Protection Collective in Washington, D.C., spring of 19, and he was one of the remaining 4 that stayed in the embassy and was actually arrested and stood trial for their actions. He was with his wife, Margaret Flowers, Adrian Pine, and David Paul. Adrian and David were co-leaders on our delegation. So the objective of this delegation was to study the commune system, the Ministry of Communes and the comunas that have really started developing under the Ministry of Communes. And I think all of you probably know that the commune system is actually structured, laid out in the Constitution, in the Constitution of the Fifth Republic. So this is something backed by the Constitution. We visited 3 different specialties. The first was in El Canal in Caracas. This was an urban comuna, a school and sports center and a swimming pool, basketball court. All of this was being renovated. So it's all been recuperated by citizens who have formed this comuna. And we did a lot of volunteer work there for them, as we did elsewhere. And we also presented donations to each comuna, some medicines, some tools, some equipment that was necessary to get their comuna businesses going. And I'll talk about that specifically with one comuna later. So after Caracas, we went out to Estado Sucre, and I know there's some of you participating tonight from Sucre. So happy to have you with us. Actually, I think there's quite a few of you from Venezuela, but I know I saw someone join from Sucre in the chat. So when we were in Sucre, we were at Las Cinco Fortalezas Comuna, which is an agricultural comuna specifically focused on growing sugarcane and then pressing it. And so we helped work with them and also help raise some funds for them to expand their cane processing plant and to provide lights so that they can work into the night and have multiple shifts instead of just one labor shift pressing the cane. Then we went to Barcelona, to the Ezequiel Zamora comuna, which is, I guess it's classified as a manufacturing comuna, but what they actually do there, they collect the plastic bottles specifically from Barcelona. It's an enormous quantity. They sort and they clean by color. And then they break it all up into little chips, and they use those chips and melt them down and make planks, like planks that you would make decking out of, park benches, chairs, all of that non-degradable, obviously, but it also wears incredibly well. One of the projects in that community for the community was replacing an existing wood pier with these plastic-made planks. And so this was a really, it was fascinating to me to see a manufacturing community. I guess somehow I hadn't quite, agriculture was familiar to me, but manufacturing was totally new. For me, in general, as Allison said, I've been organizing and leading delegations to Venezuela since 2013. I've been going to Venezuela since 2015. I have never been in the East. So for those of you on the webinar this evening from Sucre and other states in the East, I have to say that was a big part of the trip for me to see a different geographical region of the country. It's fantastically beautiful, as all of you know. And but this was also a completely new aspect of Venezuela for me personally to experience. This whole ministry of the communes, how people are reforming community councils, recuperating land, homes, fallow farmland, factories, and building a new economic system for themselves. It was an incredible experience seeing how people can be empowered and then empowered by the Constitution and then given the tools by the government to actually build a new economy for themselves. It was an incredibly powerful trip. And so with that, I would share with you, if you want to know more intimately about the trip, Code Pink and Task Force on the Americas has a webinar on Friday, September 8th. I think it's at 4 p.m., same as time as this webinar, 4 p.m. Pacific. But you can check the Code Pink and or Task Force on the Americas website. But that's Friday, September 8th, and that'll give you a full in-depth report on the delegation. Let me check my notes real quick.
Sounds good. I'll just, while you're doing that, we do have the registration link for the report back on September 8th.
Oh, good.
We'll put that in the chat. It's at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern on September 8th.
Okay, I was an hour on. Sorry, I'm an hour. I don't even know what time zone I'm in
it
right now. So I also should just say, especially since Professor Acuña was such a huge supporter of Alex Saab, and also that Camilla had the opportunity to join us this evening. Our delegation did spend an afternoon with her and the Free Alex Saab movement in Ciudad Caravilla, just west of Caracas, between Caracas and the airport. And we had a wonderful, wonderful lunch and solidarity meeting with her and all of the people in the Ciudad. And so that was a really important moment for our delegation.
Great,
thank you, Allison. So I'm sorry, all of you, I do have to go catch my connecting flight. I would love to stay with all of you, but I'm so thankful, Allison, for the invitation to speak this evening. And thank you for all of your hard work. And Professor Acuña, presente.
Presente. Thank you, Terry. Okay. Safe travels home. Go ahead.
Okay. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Good night. We do have in the chat the link to register for the full report back from the Zeese Solidarity Brigade, which, as Terry explained, went to focus and study on Venezuela's communes, on a handful of them, learn more about the sanctions and blockade against Venezuela and its impact on people in the Venezuela. And then also did have a meeting with the Free Alex Saab movement and Camilla Saab. So we'll look forward to that report back. And I encourage everyone on this call to participate and register. So our next speaker is also recently returned from Venezuela, though not quite as recently. And that is Charlotte Cates. So Charlotte is International Coordinator of Samidoun, Palestinian Political Prisoner Network, and co-chair of the International Committee of the National Lawyers Guild. Charlotte was a participant in the International People's Tribunal on U.S. imperialism, which held a hearing in Venezuela in August 2023, and is going to share some of her experiences and report back from that important event as well. So Charlotte, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Allison, and all of the organizers. It's an honor to be here with all of you today. And of course, it's an honor to be here with Camilla again, who we also had the honor of meeting and hearing testimony from during our own delegation and hearing. Our fact-finding mission took place as part of the International People's Tribunal on U.S. imperialism, sanctions, blockades, coercive economic measures. The tribunal is an international project of lawyers, academics, activists, grassroots organizers working to hold the United States and its partner countries, of course, including Canada, responsible for the crimes being committed in Venezuela and around the world through the weapon of sanctions, blockades, and coercive economic measures. And so to that end, we've been holding hearings on over 15 countries that have been targeted, of course, knowing that approximately 1/3 of the world's population are currently subjected to sanctions, blockades, and coercive economic measures. So the purpose of the tribunal is not only to document these crimes, but to organize to confront these crimes on multiple levels, one of them being the legal level, that is to actually accumulate evidence that can be used in the United States and in international courts to hold the United States government, officials, and corporations responsible legally for the harms and damage being done by their imperialist policies, particularly sanctions, blockades, and coercive economic measures, as well as pursuing academic documentation and research that can serve as a resource for grassroots movements and organizations in the Global South and in the imperial core, as well as to organize a political campaign to confront these policies of sanctions and build grassroots support and mobilization to bring these devastating killer policies to an end. At the same time, we also have the goal of highlighting the ongoing resistance to imperialism and to sanctions that are taking place in all of the targeted countries. One of the things that really came out during our fact-finding mission was how much and how deeply the Venezuelan people and their government have organized to resist these sanctions, to resist their devastating effects, to develop new means on the domestic and international fronts to fight the sanctions, to confront them head on through political organizing, to make sure that the people of Venezuela and the people of the world know who is responsible for when there are economic problems in Venezuela, when there are, issues of supply, when there are issues of financing. This isn't something that's just happening, and it's not something that's occurring because, there's been a mistake that's happened on the part of the government. This is a pre-planned crime and conspiracy that is being carried out by the United States and its partners against the people of Venezuela through the theft of property, through the theft of resources, and frankly, through an attempt at genocide targeting the people of Venezuela. We will be releasing our full findings in the near future, but you can also watch the day-long hearing that we had on our YouTube channel, and I'll put that in the chat so that people can visit there. You can see also all of the hearings that we've had on a variety of countries. So if you want to hear about US sanctions on Syria, on Iran, on Cuba, if you want to hear about the US's role in seeking to impoverish Haiti, Eritrea, Zimbabwe, visit our, and of course, Palestine, and specifically the blockade and siege on Gaza, visit our YouTube channel and you can watch all of the hearings that have already taken place so far there. Now, during our delegation, we were focused specifically in Caracas, so we also had the opportunity to visit El Penal Comuna, just like Terry already spoke about, and as well as meeting with women's organizations, LGBTQ organizations, children's rights organizations, agricultural organizations. We went to the Children's Cardiology Hospital of Latin America. We met with health workers. We met with people in the economic sector and the labor sector, essentially looking at a variety of sectors and how they have been targeted by sanctions, by US imperialism. So, for example, while the right to health and public health, as a matter of fact, is guaranteed in the Constitution of Venezuela, not only in the law, but in the Constitution, so that the health system cannot be forcibly privatized. What we see through these sanctions is an attempt to forcibly privatize the health system by subjecting Venezuelan hospitals that are run by the government to sanctions, meaning they cannot buy parts to replace equipment, they cannot get access to necessary kind of replacement parts for expensive and necessary health equipment, especially for things like complicated surgeries and treatments. That the purpose of this is actually to seek to privatize the system because they will exempt, for example, a private corporation from the sanctions. And so there's an attempt not only to impose regime change against the will of the people of Venezuela, but also an attempt to specifically impose the privatization of healthcare upon the people of Venezuela. And of course, that would come at the cost of thousands, if not millions, of Venezuelan lives. And so this is the kind of criminal activity that we're seeing perpetrated by the United States in Venezuela. Again, I mean, as Terry was already noting, visiting any of the communes is always an incredibly inspirational experience because there is a true ability to see the high level of popular resistance that's working hand in hand with the government of Venezuela to build solidarity, resistance, and anti-imperialism at a popular level. Whether that's during COVID, turning a community pool into a fish farm to feed the students for public lunches in the schools of the commune, whether that was developing an approach to COVID that was saying, well, we can't say stay home, but what we can say is stay in the commune, to organizing a pluriversity for popular education, to having a radio program that mixes, a radio station that mixes political education with popular music throughout the day to provide kind of a constant base whereby people are participating in creating their own future and people are participating in creating a future in resistance to US imperialism. As someone who organizes for the liberation of Palestine, one thing that was incredibly inspiring to see was that, throughout the streets of Venezuela, there is an incredible number of political murals and paintings and, depictions of international struggle. And so one of the, we would see, Palestina Libre or Viva Palestina in various places. And we would see, symbols of resistance in the region. When we were in the office of one of the commune leaders, he had a portrait of Hassan Nasrallah, the Lebanese resistance leader, on his wall. When we were walking through the streets of Caracas, there was a statue of Jamal Abdel Nasser, the president of Egypt, who was known for his anti-imperialist and pan-Arab organizing in much the same way that Hugo Chavez and before him, Simón Bolívar, have been known for their Bolivarian pan-Latin American organizing and commitment to resistance. And it's within this framework that Alex Saab has been imprisoned by the United States and is being held as a political prisoner in US jails. And of course, he's not alone as a political prisoner in US jails. We see the Holy Land Five, the Palestinian community organizers and leaders who have been sentenced to up to 65 years in US federal prison simply for organizing humanitarian aid to Palestine, Mumia Abu Jamal and Black liberation prisoners in US jails, Leonard Peltier and imprisoned organizers from the 70s to the present day that are organizing in indigenous resistance and defense of land and water. Alex Saab is among these political prisoners in US jails. And specifically, Alex Saab was targeted because he was working to break the blockade, because he was working to break the sanctions, because he was working to feed and build self-sufficiency and food sovereignty for the people of Venezuela. This is why he was targeted. This is why he was arrested. This is why he was imprisoned. So the issue of Alex Saab is not separate from the issue of the sanctions. In fact, it is one and the same, because it is the same crime being committed against the people of Venezuela by the United States government. That is an attempt to suppress the people of Venezuela, to confiscate their wealth, to confiscate their resources, and to use mechanisms of death, of impoverishment, of ill health, of starvation in an attempt to achieve that end. I mean, what Alex Saab was doing, he was flying between Iran and Venezuela. And this is very important because Iran and Venezuela are collectively engaged in resistance to imperialism by working together to develop new mechanisms of trade, new mechanisms of financial exchange, and to fight back against these policies that have attempted but have not succeeded in devastating their nations and their people and their governments. It's clear in both of these cases, the United States and its partners have failed miserably in the process of attempting to achieve regime change. But they're not stopping, and they want to extract any cost from the people, even in that failed project that's continuing to go on. And what Alex Saab was doing was directly working to confront that project, directly working to stop them from extracting that value from the people of Venezuela and from the people of Iran, directly working on confronting and challenging US hegemony over global systems of trade, over the seas, where we've seen both Venezuelan and Iranian vessels illegally confiscated and stolen by the United States and its allies. That's why Alex Saab was stopped and seized on a false Interpol warrant that hadn't even been issued until the day after he'd already been illegally kidnapped. It's clear that the charges against Alex Saab were always completely bogus, and this is why 7 of 8 of the charges have already been dropped, because Alex Saab is being held as a political hostage in an attempt to achieve regime change in Venezuela, in an attempt to reimpose the order before the Bolivarian Revolution, even though the people have already built their republic, their country, and their constitution to prevent this process from ever achieving a victory. I mean, they've gone so far as to attempt to recognize a fake president of Venezuela in the eyes of the world, and use that fake presidency to deny Alex Saab his diplomatic rights under international law. I mean, you cannot think of anything more legally egregious. You know, when the United States says it wants a rules-based international order, they don't mean that they want an international order based on international law or principles of justice or rules that apply to all. They mean that they make the rules and everyone else is obliged to stay in order. There's nothing else to describe other than the United States recognizing some person with no legitimate claim as the president of Venezuela, and then saying, well, the real diplomats of Venezuela don't have any rights as diplomats because we've decided some other guy is the president of your country. And not just that, but we'll steal your embassy, and we'll confiscate Citgo, and we'll confiscate petroleum refineries, and we'll confiscate billions of dollars of resources of the people of Venezuela. And not just that, but we'll lock up your diplomats and we'll kidnap them from Cape Verde for attempting to resist our unlawful, illegitimate, absolutely unlawful under international law regime of unilateral coercive measures directed against the people and nation of Venezuela. I know I don't have much time, but I just want to make one comment to wrap up, which is that, you know, at the same time that this is taking place, For the past 16 years, the people of Gaza in Palestine have been under siege. Now, of course, Palestinian people have been living under occupation and resisting Nakba for over 75 years. But there's been a very particular blockade and siege imposed on Gaza for the past 16 years because the people of Gaza, the Palestinian people as a whole, have chosen the path of resistance, have not chosen the path of acquiescence to US imperialism, to Zionist occupation, to colonization and domination, but have chosen the path of resistance instead. And so there's been an attempt, once again, just as we've seen in Venezuela, just as we've seen in Iran, an attempt to starve the Palestinian people out of their resistance. Now, the opposite has happened. The opposite has happened, just like we see it's happening in Venezuela. The opposite has happened. Instead, the resistance is stronger than it ever was. It is stronger militarily, it's stronger socially, it's stronger politically than it ever was before. But what we also see at the same time is the Zionist occupation imprisoning over 5,100 Palestinian political prisoners, including cases like those of Mohammed Halabi from Gaza. He was actually director of the World Vision charity, and he was kidnapped while engaged in charitable work. And he refused to engage in a plea agreement. So he was then sentenced to 3 times the length that he was initially offered for a sentence because he refused to plead guilty. And he was accused of, the same kind of bogus allegations that you actually see against Alex Saab. In this case was, he's sending money to the resistance. He's not using it for charitable purposes. The allegations themselves were completely bogus. In fact, they involved larger amounts of money than had been sent to Gaza for the past 40 years through this charity. But Mohammed Halabi is behind bars because he was working to break the sanctions, because he was working to break the blockade. Alex Saab is behind bars because he was working to break the sanctions, to break the blockade. And so it's up to all of us to do everything we can, politically, legally, organizationally, socially, in our movements, in our communities, to join with Mohammed Halabi, to join with Alex Saab, and do everything that we can to break the blockade, because breaking the blockade is also breaking down their prison walls. So long live the people of Venezuela and long live the Bolivarian Revolution. And we must do everything that we can to confront the role of Canada, of the United States, and of their partners in these ongoing crimes and attempted genocide against the Venezuelan people. Free Alex Saab and free Palestine.
Free Alex Saab. Thank you, Charlotte. That is, I think, an important, tying together of everything, making connections with other political prisoners in the United States and the common struggle of the Palestinian people against US imperialism. And so I think that is, thank you for those excellent words. On the call that you made for people to do everything they can to raise the understanding about the struggle of Alex Saab and other political prisoners, about sanctions and blockade on Venezuela. I do want to take a minute to encourage people, of course, to do it in whatever way possible in your communities and in your organizations, to follow the example of Camilla Saab and the Free Alex Saab movement in Venezuela, and also to, I wanted to announce the Free Alex Saab postcard campaign, which is a continuing campaign that initially launched a few months ago from the Fire This Time Movement for Social Justice, Venezuela Solidarity Campaign, also joining together with the Anti-War Committee in Minnesota. And people are coming together to sign thousands of these cards and send them in the mail, addressed to US President Biden, demanding that Alex Saab is released immediately. And I'm inviting people to add your voice, order postcards, share them at events and tables, pass them around to people. It's not only a pressure campaign on US President Biden to release Alex Saab, it is also a public education. It has the basis of fact about the case of Alex Saab, how it is a political case, it is not a legal case, and is something we have to fight for in the streets. So I encourage people to order these cards. Information for how to do so is in the chat. You can send an email to fttvenezuelasolidarity@gmail.com. And when you put them in the mail, take a selfie, put it online, and let that campaign also continue in the digital world. So thank you. And also make sure alongside the chat from alongside the link about the postcard, there are also the links to find out more about the Sanctions Tribunal that Charlotte was reporting back on. So thank you. So to wrap up our speakers panel section of the program, and then before we go into our greetings and our group photo, which I hope folks are ready for, we have Roy Lopez Ridas, who's joining us from the Free Alex Saab movement in Venezuela, someone I also finally got to meet in June and has really been a constant resource for all of us in solidarity with Alex Saab to really rely on in our continuing work. So thank you, Roy, for joining us here today.
Hola, Alison. Gracias.
Hello, Alison. Thank you for the invitation for this monthly picket action. For us in the Free Alex Saab movement, it's an honor to have people in North America, in Canada, supporting this huge support for this important struggle, which is a struggle not only for the liberation of our diplomat, Alex Saab, but actually for the respect of international law and the right to national sovereignty for Venezuela. So to start with, I wanted to say a brief comment. We met here in our struggle, Professor Luis Acuña. Of course, we knew about him before. President Nicolas Maduro was one of, as he said, he was one of the founders of the motherland. As you were saying, he was one of the drafters of our constitution, and we always saw him very close to our commander, Hugo Chavez. So it was an immense honor to have been able to share a space here with him here in these monthly picket actions, these actions that Fire This Time organizes. So it was a huge honor for us to have been able to see that closely, not only in the webinars, but actually in person, well, in the events that we held in Caracas and in personal meetings with him. So we sent a very big hug to all his family. As Camilla said, we are very shocked, very moved with his passing. So a very big hug to his family. I wanted to thank all of you who are joining us, the over 100 people who are here with us tonight. Thank you for being here with us. So Venezuela, as Terry said before, Venezuela is seeing a huge popular communal movement with very beautiful examples. Many delegations have been able to see this, to witness this, because this is constantly ongoing in Venezuela. The communes movement, the communal councils, for different ways of organizing for the population. These have been set up to take power in Venezuela. So this is an idea that was inspired by Commander Hugo Chavez, and it continues to be deployed. And after more than 900 sanctions imposed on our country, where we lost millions of dollars, the freezing of many transactions have become a hardship, a challenge to achieve all these goals that we had set for ourselves. But we are working on them, and the communes are struggling and working to get to that goal that was set by our Comandante Hugo Chavez. So what we are here for is to call for an elimination of the sanctions and the freedom of our diplomat, Alex Saab. So I wanted to give you a bit of an overview of the legal status of this struggle. Alex Saab has been kidnapped for over 1,000 days. Over 600 days of being kidnapped in the United States. This 682 days in the United States, he has not seen sunlight. He is in a very poor condition, and we have demanded from the Free Alex Saab movement and through different organizations, social organizations and political organizations from all over the world, we have demanded President Biden to execute a humanitarian action. In August the 2nd this year, over 180 political and social organizations from all over the world have signed a letter addressed to Joe Biden in Washington with the purpose of requesting an urgent humanitarian action for diplomat Alex Saab. This is a letter where we explain all these 3 years of kidnapping and the deep concern in the international community for the diplomatic status of Alex Saab, and understanding this policy developed by Joe Biden to negotiate the exchange of prisoners to get American prisoners elsewhere go back to America. Well, we are demanding freedom for our diplomats. So I wanted to name some of the organizations that have been present here. The International Organization of Democratic Lawyers, 2 Nobel Prize winners, for example, Pérez Esquivel from Argentina, and many others are signatories to this letter, different networks of intellectuals and artists, the movement of the landless workers, the Association of Mediterranean Lawyers in France, the National Arabic League, Fire This Time, the Brazilian Association of Lawyers, National Lawyers Guild in the United States. So the biggest organizations in the world are signing this letter. So we are garnering support each day, and it's been an honor to have been supported by over 180 organizations. We today are undergoing the appeal of this terrible sentence of December 23rd, 2022, which is stained by mistakes in the application of the law and things that go against the law in the United States based on the diplomatic relationships. That sentence violates the law of the United States in terms of diplomatic relationships. So this appeal process is ongoing since June 13, 2023, one day before the event that we organized here. The appeals court confirmed the document, confirmed the jurisdiction, to consider the appeal. So they gave a 30-day period, which ended in July the 30th, because it's only working days. And this was a period for the Department of Justice to submit their response writ. But they presented a motion before the appeals court to request for an extension of 30 days. But on June, they requested another extension. So they have requested 4 extensions in this case for another 30 days. So we have a period until September 13th, and this has been given to them. So this will be ongoing at least until September the 13th. And this is another 30 days in which Alex Saab is not with his wife and his children. So from here, we are urgently requesting the liberation of our diplomat who is suffering serious health conditions. So to conclude, I want to speak of this contradictory position by the United States. They have requested and issued a communique to the Organization of Western Africa's nations regarding the Niger political situations, and they have requested them to take down the government, otherwise they will be invaded. So this on March the 15th and June the 24th, they demanded we demanded the liberation of Alex Saab, and at that moment, the Department of State did not say anything. So this is a contradictory position. Once again, as we said before, we want to speak about the mistreatment of Alex Saab, not only in prison, but also during trials. The case of George Alvarez, for example, a North American citizen that murdered cold blood 9 Venezuelans by crashing them with his car and also leaving 8 people injured. He was taken to the trial without any handcuffs, and Alex Saab, each time he went to the court, he was handcuffed and with an orange clothes. So, and this person did not have the right to bail. And Alex Saab only having 1 charge, he was denied this right to bail, and he was denied the right for medical visits and family visits. So here from Venezuela, we request the government of the United States to provide, as all these organizations have requested, a humanitarian action so that Alex Saab can come back to Venezuela, because he is a diplomat, he is innocent, and because his health calls for. He requires a urgent medical treatment. So thank you, Alison, for the space. And from the Free Alex Saab movement, we are very thankful for all your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy, for joining us today and helping us tie everything together. This important webinar and monthly picket action. I can't believe that there have been 30 of these monthly picket actions. Of course, we wish there wasn't another month, that the blockade against Venezuela was lifted, that Alex Saab was free, but we will continue these actions until that does happen. Thank you for sharing the important news, important to our work, that the trial of Alex Saab has once again been delayed until June. This is something that we have to continue to protest against. It's a further attack on his human rights, on his rights to see a doctor and Venezuelan consulate staff, and be treated with dignity. It is really something that we have so much work that we can and will do together. And we are continually inspired by the work of the Free Alex Saab movement. So thank you for joining us and for giving us those important updates. We are going to go to the next section of the program, which is just a few greetings from folks here across Canada. Since we began the monthly picket actions, this has continued as a way for people to share some perspective on ongoing work, report on what they've been doing, but also just to share their solidarity from across this and many of the provinces across Canada, and be able to connect with one another So I'm going to start this section with a video. This video is from Nino Paglitzia, who is a Venezuelan and a solidarity activist living here in Vancouver, who wanted to share this video with us here today because he was unable to join in person.
Saludos. Mi nombre es Nino Paglitzia.
Greetings, my name is Nino Paglitzia, and on behalf of the Hugo Chavez Front and on behalf of myself as a Venezuelan, I wanted to say that we have received the sad news that our dear friend and inspirer, Professor Luis Acuña, died last Sunday in Caracas as a consequence of a pulmonary infection. We don't have enough words to express our feelings at this moment. However, we take strength from his exemplary personality as a human being, as an educator, a tireless educator, as a Bolivarian revolutionary. These are the qualities of Professor Luis Acuña, which were shown in each event as a diplomat in Canada and as a profoundly socialist citizen in Venezuela. Having heard his honest words and lessons with a kind tone but with a very strong force have been the keys of his work as a diplomat, and for us, as a solidarity comrade, Luis Acuña has been an exemplary ambassador of the Republic of Venezuela in Canada and an impeccable diplomat. However, the government of Canada, with its typical empire position and puppet of the United States, did not allow him to continue his work in the embassy of Venezuela in Ottawa. The government of Canada has not had the courage of telling Luis Acuña in his face that he was a non-grata person. Luis Acuña came back to Venezuela, but he never left us. He maintained a constant contact, and from Caracas, he tried to continue his work in the consulate. He contributed on behalf of Venezuela to this program each month. We will miss his physical presence, but his Bolivarian inspiration for our solidarity work with Venezuela will continue to live on, and in that way we will remember him and we will honor his memory. We are honored of having had the opportunity of working with him. We send our regrets and to his family and to the whole people of Venezuela, which was represented by Professor Luis Acuña. We will remember him always as a dear friend, part of the solidarity movement in Canada. Luis Acuña, presente.
Luis Acuña, presente. Thank you to Nino Paglitzia for that video. And next, I'm going to see if Mary Carmen Guevara, who is joining us from Ottawa, leading organizer in solidarity with Venezuela and Cuba and other just causes through ALBA Movimientos. I see you, Mary Carmen. Thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you, Alison, and greeting from ALBA Social Movements here in Ottawa. I would like to send my message to the Venezuelan people in Spanish. Nosotros aquí en Canadá.
Here in Canada, in Ottawa, for us it was a pleasure and an honor having had Professor Acuña close to us. To Venezuelans, I want to say that you're not the only ones who are sad about this loss. This jacket that I am wearing was given to me by him, by Professor Luis Acuña, and he said, "This is yours because it's as if you were Venezuelan," and I'm very thankful of having been close to him. We worked together and we did a lot to try to to lift this unjust, unfair blockade against Venezuela. When he had to leave for Venezuela, he was not leaving happy because things here were not improving and were actually becoming worse because of the relationship between Canada and Venezuela. The day I heard about what happened to him, I heard through a comrade in the embassy, the person that was in charge of the embassy, because the government of Canada had pushed him, Professor Luis Acuña, away. So we met with Angel, very sad, in the embassy. We were alone there, and he said, "Don't worry, comrade, we will have a great man coming here and you will be able to work with him." So he was a very great man. We miss him. We are sorry that he will not be here with us, but as Nina said, he will continue living on with his teachings, his lessons. So thank you all. And ALBA movement sends a very big embrace to his family and to the whole Venezuelan community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Carmen. We were able to share the photos earlier. I did a kind of overview of his work in Canada. So thank you for sending those photos and helping us remember Professor Luis Acuña today. So next I wanted to invite Karen Rodman, who is here with Just Peace Advocates.
Thanks, Allison, and what an honor to be able to be part of this program. And thank you, Allison and FIRE this time for giving us the space to remember and to just take in all of this as we pass our condolences to the family, to the friends, and to the Venezuelan community. For those of us who did not work directly with him, but had the chance to be part of each of these pickets for the last 29 pickets before this one, we felt him as a friend. We felt all the things that we've been hearing today in terms of the loyalty, his role as a diplomat, but as an educator, as such a gentle inspiration, such an encouragement to all of us to come together. And so we hold that as we consider and remember and continue moving forward. And thank you for having the program tonight with such powerful panels so that we can just keep that movement moving forward as well. So thanks, Allison, and to all the speakers who allowed that to happen as well.
Thank you, Karen. It is great to be working together on these and to have representation from all across Canada. One thing, now we are going back, as many people have announced, in-person events, continue organizing face-to-face, but to continue to have this space where we can connect across the country is important, and to show our united voice demanding freedom for Alex Saab and an end to US-Canada sanctions against Venezuela. For our final greeting, I want to invite up Janine Solanki, who's with Mobilization Against War and Occupation here in Vancouver.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be on with you all today, even though we are all a bit sad and you know, having this unfortunate commemoration today for our comrade Luis Acuña. On behalf of Mobilization Against War and Occupation, I want to extend our condolences to the family and friends of Luis Acuña. We've become so used to every month having him here with us, even though he couldn't be with us in Canada, being with us online, being every month with us to share his words, to share his perspectives. It's a great loss, not just for us, but of course for Venezuela and for all who are fighting for a better world. Luis Acuña was part of that fight and continues to be in our memories and through his example and his legacy. So of course, as we're all here today and we have said already, and we will continue to say, Luis Acuña presente. Luis Acuña, and with him, behind him, the power of the Bolivarian revolution have been fighting not just for a better Venezuela, but in the fight for a better world. We're up against the two powerful forces in the world today, the forces of imperialism that are waging a new era of war and occupation that we've seen destroy so many countries around the world, and the forces of those fighting for a better world, the forces of those in Venezuela, in Cuba, in this webinar today, people around the world who are facing wars and occupations and are fighting back and are saying, we demand our self-determination, we demand our dignity and our sovereignty. People in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Haiti, in Syria, in Libya, in Yemen, in so many countries that have faced what US-backed wars and occupations with the participation of many imperialist countries, including Canada, what that really means. And so we know that when the United States government, when the government of Canada say that they know what's best for Venezuela, we just have to look around the world and say that anything that the United States government and their imperialist allies are doing to intervene in other countries is not for the interest of the people, but is only for the interests of imperialist forces and the ruling class. So as we're here today, every month and continuing, with all the important work we're doing in between, we continue to demand self-determination for Venezuela, to support the Bolivarian Revolution, to demand freedom for Alex Saab. Hands off Venezuela, free Alex Saab. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. Hands off Venezuela, free Alex Saab. Luis Acuña, professor, presente. So we are now in the part of the program where we join together for a group photo. For anyone that would like to join, we'll get an invitation in your computer, on your phone, that will say, do you want to be upgraded, to be promoted to panelist? You can say yes if you would like to be able to turn on your camera and join us for the photo. I will also take this time to to give a big heartfelt thanks to all of our speakers and participants here today, to say thank you to Camilla Fabry Saab, to Roy Lopez Rivas from Venezuela, to TERI MATTSON and Charlotte Cates, who shared their experiences on the ground in Venezuela, and also to everyone who posted into the chat their greetings, their solidarity, and their condolences from Fire This Time Movement for Social Justice, Venezuela Solidarity Campaign. I also send our deepest condolences and solidarity to the people of Venezuela and the family and loved ones of Professor Luis Acuña. And recall that each month, something he was sure to say was that we, as people living outside of Venezuela, are the voice of Venezuelans. Mm-hmm. Major media in the United States, Canada, capitalist media around the world does not let the voice of poor working people in Venezuela, of the Bolivarian revolutionary process, does not let that voice into the mainstream media. We have to do our work to be that voice, to share what we know and understand to be the horrible impact of US, Canada sanctions and blockade against the country, and to demand freedom for Alex Saab as a political prisoner held in the United States. Let us carry out the work of Professor Luis Acuña and his teachings and everything he shared by continuing our commitment to free Alex Saab and to end all sanctions and blockade against Venezuela. That is what we can do to really show how much we learned from the time that we had here with him. So with those words, some folks are starting to join us here in the space where we joined to take our group photo. There's also continuing to be more messages in the chat. Please copy and paste those messages or open them on your computer. Make sure you register for upcoming events and also join the free Alex Saab postcard campaign. I'm just getting a few more people joining here. So if you'd like to join the chat and you haven't received the invitation, join the group photo and you have not received the invitation, please raise your hand and we will gladly find you. I think the system has a little bit of a delay today, as sometimes happens, but we'll be really glad to have everyone who can join in the photo. Even if you don't have a sign or a postcard, you can unite with your voice and with a picture. Please, if you haven't received the invitation, go ahead and raise your hand or post in the chat if that is not making sense. Also, I will say a big, big thank you to Mercedes and Julieta, who are our excellent translators for today, interpreters working under some pretty difficult conditions of some fast speakers and some some difficult audio, and so we really appreciate all of their work every month. It's impossible to replicate. Okay, I think everyone that's able to turn on their cameras has now received the invitation. And if you're a panelist, you have to now do the job of actually turning on your camera on your computer if you'd like. If anyone did not receive an invitation, please raise your hand and we'll give you a second, or post in the chat. And then we'll go ahead and unmute folks as well so we can all chant together. It's a little chaotic, but a beautiful sound. Okay. I think we are good. Let's all say together. Free Alex
Free
Saab.
Alex Saab.
Free
Alex Saab.
Free Alex
Free Alex
Saab.
Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
No to sanctions on Venezuela.
Free Alex
Free
Saab.
Alex Saab.
Hands off Venezuela.
Free
Alex Saab. Venezuela.
Hands off Venezuela.
Hands off Venezuela. Hands
Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
And finally, Luis Acuña, Profesor Luis Acuña, presente.
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 Presente. Ahora y siempre.
Ahora y siempre, presente.
Luis Acuña, presente.
Now and ever,
Siempre.
presente. Thank you all. We will see you next month in this continued united struggle to free political prisoner held in U.S. jails, Alex Saab, and lift the cruel U.S.-Canada blockade and sanctions against Venezuela. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.